Hey guys, a little bittersweet coming back for this new review and recap because, as I'm sure many of you already know, it was announced the other day that Ash vs. Evil Dead has been canceled. I was really upset when I first heard the news, but you know what? We got 3 full seasons of this absolutely batshit, gory, wonderful show, and I'm holding on to that and just staying thankful that we got it at all. Plus, there is still 1 more episode to go this season, and episode 9, called Judgment Day, paves the way to that season 3 finale, and I guess the series finale now, very, very well. Here we begin with Ruby, Kaya, and Zoe. It's a pretty nasty cold open that adds a new layer of terror to the fact that the Necronomicon is made from human flesh. It's something, as an Evil Dead fan, I've heard time and time again, but that idea takes on a new meaning when you actually see it happen, and that is what Ruby and Kaya do to poor Zoe, and then once they have their new page that will supposedly mask the presence of the Necronomicon from the Dark Ones, they kill her. Back at Ash's place, we've got Ash, Pablo, and Brandy all together, but only for a little while because each of them does have a different responsibility right now. At the house, Pablo has a really good scare when he goes blind, but he also gains new sight through the eyes of the Necronomicon. Something like this should feel a little too convenient, but the show and Ray Santiago sell it really well. Pablo's only been El Brujo Especial for so long, and we know he's connected to the book, so this ability does make some sense, and thanks to it, he's able to tell Ash where Ruby is, and he also overhears Ruby saying she needs to find the rift before the Dark Ones break through. So Pablo goes to the hardware store to guard the rift, and Ash goes to Ruby's place to get Kelly's body, while poor Brandy is left at home again. But she's still queasy from the whole dying and coming back to life thing, so I guess it does make sense. Plus, that spit-up joke at the end of the scene really did make me laugh. Pablo makes it to the hardware store basement, but he's too late. The rift is open, he can't close it, and in come the Dark Ones. They take the missing Necronomicon pages, but they actually don't kill Pablo because apparently they think he's one of them, so good for Pablo, but not so good for the town of Elk Grove, because the moment the Dark Ones enter our world, it seems like every other person out there is going deadite, mutilating themselves, attacking others, and on top of that, the drafter is loosed, and that's what brings us back to Brandy now. She is chased out of the house by the drafter and chased into the shed, where we get one of my favorite sequences, maybe of the whole season, a scene that shows me why Ariel Carver-O'Neill scored this role to begin with. Maybe Brandy didn't grow up with Ash as a present father, but she's still his child and has some of his qualities. Her scene in the shed is obviously very reminiscent of Evil Dead 2, and Carver-O'Neill seizes that opportunity and delivers big time with the physical horror comedy here. While hiding there, her phone rings. It's her mom. Clearly that can't be, but she is tempted to answer it, and who can blame her? And when she does, the phone goes demon and it bites her thumb, eventually right off. This leads to her thinking her whole arm is infected and resorting to dear old dad's tactics of chopping off her hand. But thankfully for her, that was only evil messing with her head. Ultimately, she does get out and she runs into Pablo, but I'll stick with this scene a little longer because, again, I loved it. Carver-O'Neill sells genuine terror, but also has absolutely no problem tipping the scale and embracing the just absurdity of the moment. It's fun, but it's also scary, even when they introduce that downright wacky Muppet demon version of her cell phone. Between her performance and the way director Rick Jacobson captures the moment, this is a scene to me that's just pure Evil Dead through and through, and clearly I loved it. Back at Ruby's place, she and Kaya finally finish setting up for a ritual, but it's pretty much too late. Not only do they go head-to-head with Ash then, but soon enough, the Dark Ones show up. They condemn Kaya and then suck the life out of Ruby. Really, neither of them stood a chance, and just like that, Ruby, who has essentially been the main series villain here, is just dead. While all that's going on, Ash does manage to grab the book and Kelly's body. He reunites with Brandy and Pablo in front of the hardware store, but it isn't as simple as going down to the basement, going back into the rift, and just saving Kelly. The Dark Ones put the lost pages back into the book and conjure something that's apparently there to test the mettle of man. Something enormous rises from the streets of Elk Grove, and that is where Judgment Day leaves us. Clearly, they're going big with the last episode next week, and appropriately titled The Medal of Man, and now that I know this really is the end, it is more important to me than ever that they really close out the show strong, and I think they are in a good position to do just that right now. Other than reuniting Kelly with her body, the main focus should be stopping the evil overall, and I'm curious to see if this is a scenario where they defeat the Dark Ones, especially when the Dark Ones are focusing on this idea of testing the mettle of man. So can man pass this test and then they come to some sort of agreement with the Dark Ones? I kind of think that is where things are heading. Plus, if the evil remains in some form, that could leave the door open to maybe another distributor picking up the show, or maybe a crossover with the film franchise. I am trying not to get my hopes up too high for something like that right now, but this is a horror franchise, and not many of them just end once and for all. Just like I don't think Ruby is 100% gone. I do like that the last thing we hear her say here is the savior of humanity will destroy you all, because after everything they've been through, she actually endorses Ash at the end, which is a really nice touch. But why I think she's still semi in play is because whereas the Dark Ones put Kaya in her body and then burn it, it looks like Ruby was sucked out of hers before the body shriveled up. So maybe she's locked away in the Deadlands somewhere, and who knows, maybe there's something she can do to help them from that realm, and she'll still have one last positive contribution to the final episode. So it's one more to go now, and even though the show is coming to an end, it is very impressive that Ash vs. Evil Dead could possibly wrap its run without a single bad episode, in my opinion at least. Sure, there are some that I liked more than others, but I really don't think there is a point of this series that dipped below a certain quality level. I'm going to stress this a little more in next week's video, but quickly, thank you to the creators, the staff, and the cast for just making this show such a treat and a pleasure to cover. Can't wait to see how Season 3 wraps up next Sunday, and you know what? You can bet I'm going to be right back here recapping and reviewing it.